a short statement. I put it on Facebook, and I wanted to read it to you. It's about the Biden and Trump debate. And here it goes. I watched a few recorded minutes of tonight's presidential debate, and I can't help but feel profoundly concerned and disappointed with the current state of Western civilization and the future of our species and our planet. I am, however, not surprised or shocked. The prospects for the job of most powerful human on the planet are a reflection of the state of the U.S. American empire. One candidate profoundly displayed his party's hallmarks: decadent, corrupt, hypocritical, rapidly declining, incapable of telling the truth, narcissistic, proudly psychopathic, out of touch with the reality of those of us who toil away with our hands for a living, pandering to the fear inspired fascist impulses amongst our species, tribal, devoid of empathy, full of demagoguery, morally bankrupt, pathological lying, casually and blatantly spewing false propaganda, while still believing to be a good Christian patriot. The other candidate personified the state of Western democracies, mostly well-intentioned, antiquated, fearful of its own creations, sputtering, unable to silence the specter of the old fascist guard, still poisoning the soul of the nation, still willing to compromise with the hate of his opponents in order to buy time for another less hateful generation to come. Aware of his mistakes, tired, dying, barely functional, still willing to fight, but unwilling to pass the torch to the new breed of progressive humans for fear of being labeled radical, while at the same time perpetuating the old imperialist habit of supporting atrocities overseas in order to get the Christian votes. We stand at a crossroads in history, as do billions of humans on this planet who will be affected by the results of November's U.S. presidential election. We must understand that the cult that is today's Republican Party will not budge 1 inch in their support for their fascist cult leader. No amount. I'm sorry about that. I got lost. No amount of fair trial criminal convictions of their demagogue criminal leader will diminish their support for him. They're his cult followers and are willing to start a civil war if him or his co-conspirators ask for it. On the other hand, Democrats face the gargantuan task of saving the world from a US-led fascist theocracy and the horrific consequences such a regime would have on millions of people whose rights would be most likely destroyed for decades, if not forever. We're talking about the end of coverage for pre-existing medical conditions, mass deportations of millions of undocumented workers. This will trigger a collapse in the construction, hotel services, landscape maintenance, tourism, restaurant, agriculture, and other manual labor-intensive industries. This, in turn, will skyrocket the costs of all the services and goods provided by these labor-intensive industries, which are anchored and supported almost exclusively by migrant workers, many of them undocumented. Total abortion bans will kill thousands of women trying back alley abortions and dying from sepsis, from being forced to carry dead fetuses until they turn septic before doctors can intervene, Entire curriculums of my Black and Native American history will be erased and prohibited from being taught in public schools across red states, just like it has already been done in Florida, and be substituted by the whitewashed false history telling our children that George Washington and other racist white men were the perfect human beings, and mention nothing about the atrocities they committed against the hundreds of enslaved humans they owned, like one owns a pair of shoes. LGBT people will once more experience overt violence and discrimination against them, and they won't have any recourse for redress. Today, thanks to the right-wing Republican Christian conservative-dominated Supreme Court, corrupt judges are openly allowed to accept bribes after ruling in favor of their donors and friends by simply calling the bribes gratuities or tips. Right-wing staff courts across the U.S. are openly allowing Republicans to redraw congressional districts to favor Republican voters, essentially eliminating the representation of Democratic voters, even if they outnumber the Republican ones. They are also allowing Republicans to close hundreds of voting places in predominantly black districts, and even allowing laws against bringing water to voters while standing in hours-long voting lines under the sun, just like Brian Kemp did in Georgia. Republican Christians have also normalized constant massacres with their zero gun control and thoughts and prayers approach to the carnage created by their genocidal political donors from the gun lobby. We can expect many more never-ending gun massacres if they win. Furthermore, many of the politicians and pundits in the Republican Party are calling for the elimination of the constitutional amendment that guarantees citizenship to everyone born in the U.S. They specifically want children born in the U.S. whose parents are undocumented migrants to be denied U.S. citizenship and be deported. On top of that, Democrats are now facing their toughest existential threat, a president who looked at times lost during a presidential debate and not up to the task of presiding over anything, let alone the most powerful nation on earth. But that's not all. They're also facing having to deal with the consequences of the widely unpopular support of the Israeli genocide of the Palestinian people. I'm afraid the Democrats are going to have to schedule a convention to choose another leader for their party. If they don't, they risk helping to bring the end of democracy in the United States. As for the voters, the choice might seem confusing. Many are talking about not voting, and nothing is more dangerous than not voting. Trump's cult will not lose one vote. But if people decide to not vote because Biden didn't look up to the task, and they think their no vote will affect the amount of votes Trump will get, they are sorely mistaken. The task at hand is simple. Make sure a vile, racist goon like Trump never comes near the Oval Office of the White House ever again. Ever. We can deal with the Democrats convening to replace their leader. And if Biden is unable to preside, they have a highly competent vice president who could choose a competent vice president or delegate. We know none of the possible replacements for Biden are anywhere near being the raving mad, fascist, racist, raping, criminal lunatic that Trump is. So there's no risk of anyone in the Democratic pool of presidential candidates being a dangerous sociopath. We also know that many Democrats are pushing for a cessation of military support for Netanyahu if a ceasefire is not reached very soon. The Republican Party wants to continue the blind support of Netanyahu's genocide of the Palestinians and the end of Palestine. The next few months will be critical for the survival of the experiment called the United States of America and all who are affected by its government and reach. If that sounds scary, it's because it is. But we still have a say. We have to vote in large numbers and let the fascist theocratic elements in the US and the world know that we are vigilant and will not be fooled by their demagoguery and fear mongering. Fascism is not the answer to civilization's woes. It is its most lethal and ancient enemy. And I would like to also add, because when I wrote this, the Supreme Court had not done the atrocity that they just did of granting this fascist goon immunity. So now it's even worse. We have a Supreme Court that gave carte blanche to presidents to perform political assassinations, mass arrests of their political opponents, and now with the Heritage Foundation's fascist manifesto of Project 2025, they have laid out a complete plan of how to turn the United States into an extreme right-wing fascist nation. And its leader just openly threatened with a bloody revolution, a bloody civil war. So you have to vote. You have to vote the sociopathic fascist out of power, all of them.